Hey everyone, welcome back to the American Justice Podcast Q&A edition for episode 20. We are getting on up there.
I can't believe we're at 20 already.
Episode 20. Our podcast is almost old enough to drink.
Next week.
One episode away from being able to legally buy alcohol in the state of Texas.
That's right.
Scott, how's
Although
your week going?
Episode 21 may make us want to drink for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I start talking about the knife.
I'm asking you a question. How's your week going?
For those of you that don't know, we've had a little bit of banter going on before the camera started rolling. So Chad is apparently in a mood today, and
I'm always in a mood.
Anyways, my week's gone great. Chad, how about yours?
Peachy, just peachy.
You got the. Am I allowed to say
You
the
can
first draft?
say it. I'm just not allowed to show it. I got the. Well, it's actually the finalized cover. Okay. That's actually what the cover is going to be to Starving Zoe. So
minus all the titles and stuff.
Right. Minus all the titles. Those are going to be done this week, and maybe next week I might be able to have a cover reveal. Okay. Not allowed to share it. I can show people. I'm not allowed to send it to anybody. I can show people as long as I'm standing next to them on my phone.
Okay.
So
maybe next
copyright
week.
law.
Maybe next week.
Yeah.
We'll put it up on the screen.
You can still go to cDerickMiller.com and see maybe if by chance I did sneak it in there somewhere.
Accidentally.
Right?
With the
on
air
purpose.
quotes.
Scott, why don't you introduce this new edition we have?
Yes, we have somebody just sitting right between us, and we're not even acknowledging her. But that's because we always save the best for last.
Absolutely.
We have Miss Katherine Ferguson, who was Brandon's co-chair, trial attorney, when he was on trial in Hunt County, Texas. Welcome to the Q&A episode of our American Justice Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to be here and try to answer some questions.
Oh yeah, we had a lot of questions come in for you. This is I will have to say that this is one of the episodes that we got the most questions. And we're very cognizant of your time, so we didn't bring all 20 or 30 of them. We boiled it down to, what do we have, 5 or 6 questions?
I think we have 5. I think we have 6.
6 questions.
Okay.
Okay.
I think she's running neck and neck with Susan Constantine.
That's true. Susan, the body language expert. We had a lot of questions for her as well. And plus, you never know, we might have some extra questions that pop into our minds while we're talking.
Exactly.
So, maybe more. But anyways.
All right. Well, why waste any more time? Let's jump on it. Let's get. I'm gonna have a cheat sheet. By the way, I don't have the laptop here to read off.
I didn't bring my laptop.
So all you people out there that are watching this are like, he's totally reading that. Yes, I am totally reading that. So
At least you can read.
That's true. At least I can read and better. I have progressives now, okay. So I can read better. And
wow.
I'm getting.
So you can actually read all the words.
and see the gray roots that are just starting to head south. They're heading for the gravity.
That's why I shaved my head, because I saw gray hair and I was like, oh, I'm not having any. I'm just kidding. I didn't.
You men, my whole head has gone.
Yeah, have you ever seen me like this before?
You do kind of look like a baby bird that fell out of a nest.
That was the look I was looking for. I'm starting to look like one of those Duck Dynasty guys, I think.
You know what's funny is people women especially, I think they get more distinguished as their hair. Like Betty White, for example. She looks amazing for 99,000 years old or however she is. I don't even recognize pictures when I see her, when she was in her 20s and 30s and she had her full brown hair. I was I just always thought of Betty White as
she also didn't ruin herself with, 600 different variants of plastic surgery and silicone injections and cheek plumping and
I think
lip plumping and all that other horror.
She's turning a hunt. Hey,
among others.
Yeah.
Jessica Lange.
Wow.
Yeah.
Joan Rivers before.
Oh, Meg Ryan.
Meg Ryan.
Is she real? I haven't seen
Meg
that.
Ryan. Meg Ryan used to be. Meg Ryan was the cute all-American girl from, When Harry Met Sally and You've Got Mail.
Yeah.
And she doesn't look anything like that now. She's like something out of a horror show.
Even someone that's probably a generation younger than Meg Ryan, Renee Zellweger.
Yeah.
Has had a lot of work done as well. Where she
claims she didn't, though. And she actually, it's interesting because There was a period for a while where she didn't look like herself anymore, like she had work done, and I don't know if she went back and had it reversed because she kind of looks more like herself now. So I don't know if they can reverse it or not. But
Well, sometimes you check the air in your tires and realize you have to let a little bit out.
I remember seeing, when I hadn't seen Joan Rivers for a while, and then I saw her, like, she looked totally plastic. I love her to death. She was an amazing comedian, but she just, like, her lips were just like, I mean, she just did, she looked like a clown face. And I'm like, I just think to myself, why would anyone need to do that to themselves? Anyways, I don't know. We're getting off on a totally different subject, but
We
I
hope
never
you guys
understood
enjoyed that, by the way.
But Betty White still looks amazing for almost 100. I think she's like 97, 98.
well,
so.
and Helen Mirren is
Helen Mirren, absolutely. She
very
looks-
well
Yeah.
taking care of herself and no plastic surgery. She's my hero, actress.
Are you guys ready for some questions?
I thought they just tuned in to hear us, just kind of banter for a while.
Well, I
Well,
mean,
they do. The first 10 minutes or
First
so
10
is
minutes,
always
Huey,
banter.
Louie, and Dewey.
Always banter. Well, let's get on to some questions.
All right, I think we got some questions.
Our first question comes from Nemitra from Wichita Falls, Texas.
Nemitra.
Do they actually have waterfalls in Wichita Falls? I've been all through Wichita Falls and I've never seen waterfalls.
Tornadoes carried them off.
The tornadoes carried them off. I always wondered where it got its name, and
And what's a Wichita?
that's a place in Kansas.
Well, I know, but
Well, maybe they
if it's
fell from
Wichita
Wichita.
Falls, so yeah, like what's a Wichita and why
Somebody
the
brought,
falling?
somebody brought the creek with them. I don't know.
Maybe somebody just saw
The Wichita
you know,
lineman showed up.
I think it
And
has
he
like,
fell off the pole, and it was Wichita Falls.
I do think it does have like the world's smallest skyscraper in Wichita Falls. Though.
Smallest
The world's
skyscraper.
smallest skyscraper. Somebody promised to build them a giant skyscraper like close to 100 years ago, and it ended up being a con job, and it's only like 6 or 7 stories tall. It's,
Oh,
And
wow.
a tornado hadn't
The
gotten it?
tornado has not gotten it, I don't believe. I think it almost burned down not too long ago, though.
I'm gonna have to find a picture of that and put it on the screen.
World's smallest skyscraper. Seriously, check it out. Okay, Nemitra asked, what should have happened in Perfect County after the Sixth Amendment violation was brought to the attention of the court?
In a perfect situation, what should have happened is, number one, the court should have allowed us to have access to the notes that the DA's office took from listening to Brandon's phone calls, because we were basically having to prove what they learned, which we couldn't prove what they learned or how it impacted or changed their strategy on the case because the court wouldn't let us have the notes. They allowed them to claim attorney-client privilege, or attorney work product actually, to protect their notes, even though they had completely raped our attorney-client privilege. It was suddenly, oh, no, work product is sacrosanct and we can't let you have that, even though they just ran roughshod over your rights. So in a perfect world, we'd have gotten access, and I forget how many pages of notes there were. I had sent, trying to box them in, I had sent a Freedom of Information request to the district attorney's office asking for them to turn over what they got from the Sixth Amendment violation. And at that time, Duncan Thomas was the DA, and he wrote back to the AG and said, well, I've got, and I don't remember how many pages of notes now, I forget.
It was 40.
42,
yeah,
something
yeah.
like that. And my argument is, well, you sure took a lot of notes for someone who didn't learn anything from any of this. You got 42 pages of notes,
Right.
and we were, I argued that to the court, but they wouldn't let us have at it. But ideally, we would have had those notes. Had we had those notes and had we determined that they had been able to glean something from it in effect how they were strategizing their case, then we would have been able to argue for dismissal with prejudice.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we try to point out in the episode is that it's difficult when somebody says, okay, if you want something suppressed, tell us what you want suppressed. And it's like, okay, well, we need to look over the notes to see what we need to see if what was suppressed. And
Well,
we
it's
can't have
not
the
a
notes.
question of suppression. It's a question of just trying to figure out what they learned, because if we could show what they learned and what I suspect they learned, then we would have had a better shot at getting the whole case thrown out and dismissed for prosecutorial misconduct.
Okay. All right. Nemitra from Wichita Falls. Thank you very much for your question. I hope you enjoyed your answer. It was a very educated one. We're not used to a lot of those. We're not used to educated answers.
We usually just kind of throw out lots of opinions and juxtapose and just like
and
hope it sticks.
We suppress a lot of our opinions, but we discuss them when the cameras are off. That's for damn sure. All right, next question comes from Louis from Richardson, Texas. Do you think Todd Williams was set up to find Mr. and Mrs. Woodruff after they had been murdered? With Charla being a criminal justice major, she should have known that welfare checks are the job of the sheriff's department.
That one I can't really say, because she could have called the sheriff's office to do a welfare check, but it would also make sense to call someone who was a family friend and say, hey, go look at this, go check on these people and make sure they're okay. So that one could go either way. It could have been a setup, and it could have just been, this is someone that knows my parents, is close by, send them out to check on them.
Yeah, and that was kind of the issue, was that nobody lived there. Brandon was in Abilene, Charla was in Arkansas.
Right.
All the other extended family was in Arkansas, so nobody, they literally didn't have anybody to call other than the sheriff's department or, some of these extension agents and stuff, friends of the family over in Rockwall. So that was kind of one of those things where you just kind of you don't really know. You don't, there's nobody. I mean, obviously if one of the family members would have been in the area, they could have just gone and done it themselves. But yeah, she had to call somebody. And from what I understand, there was a lot of kind of talking back and forth between her and her Aunt Linda, and just kind of well, I haven't heard from them, and and you kind of almost, I think it's also one of those things where you just kind of, you don't want to admit that there might be something really wrong.
Yes,
so
because that's everybody's worst nightmare, is, they're not answering the phone because they're dead, as opposed to they're not answering the phone because they left it off the charger and oops.
Yeah, and they're just really sick,
or they're just sitting there reading and blithely unaware because the phone's dead, and that's not going to beep at them, and you're not going to know when you call them. It's just going to ring, 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 ring.
Right.
And I don't remember the batteries on those little 2005 Nokia phones lasting a very long time either.
Well, and I was thinking about the home phone too, because they had a handset with an answering machine.
It was tied. Weren't all the lines tied together? It would ring the cell phones, and then it would ultimately go to the landline. Okay, that's right. Okay, I guess. But it's, as far as the question goes with setting up Todd Williams, I mean, we can only speculate at this point.
Yeah, there's no. And what would you set him up for? I mean, he was a totally innocent bystander, and I don't know. I don't know the motivation behind that. If there was, I haven't found anything in the the investigation I've been doing that would show that Todd was pretty much just the guy that unfortunately found him, and it could have been anybody. If it would have been Todd, would have been busy, they might have called the next person, and then it could have been the next person. So
I think there were other people that were involved in this case that they would have chose to set up long before they would have set him up.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm going to go with no.
We're going to take a vote
from Richardson. I'm going to go with no. But I like the way you're thinking.
Right. It's an interesting kind of I don't know.
All right. Louis from Richardson, thank you very much for your question.
Thank you, Louis.
For a little bit. We like that. Next question comes from Monica from New York City. Monica Geller?
Maybe. I don't know.
Central Perk? Did you watch Friends? Did you ever watch Friends?
Let's not go into this on the air and reveal what a complete uber nerd I am.
I didn't watch Friends. I mean, of course, I've seen episodes. Everyone's seen episodes, but I've never really paid attention to the show.
No, I didn't either.
So it was one of those things. It was on. Everybody loved it. So I didn't have to watch it because they all did.
Right.
I just had no interest.
Monica from New York asks, did anyone from your office or Jerry Spencer Davis's office ever contact any of Brandon's 4-H adult leaders? If so, were they subpoenaed to testify in court? The adult leaders probably knew the other shit kickers and might have known the ringleader's mom as well, Norma Etherington. If Brandon was as good a kid as it seems he was, it looks like his adult leaders would have been able to testify on his behalf.
Yes, we did call them to testify. We did call his ag teacher from Rockwall, and I cannot remember his name, but this was the gentleman that, because he went back to the Rangers and said, you know, I really think you're looking at the wrong kid because this is Brandon and he had some issues over here. And this is the one that Ranger Collins threatened with the, well, you know, anybody can say anything and people can say that Brandon turned out the way he did because of your influence on him. Basically implying that the man had had an improper sexual relationship with Brandon.
Oh yeah, that was Todd Williams, the guy we were just talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe there is something to what Lewis was asking. So.
But no, we called him to testify, and we had other people that testified as to Brandon's character, that he was a good kid, that he was, you know, kind of this goofy, happy-go-lucky kid.
Well, one of the things that that I did want to say is when I saw this question, and I had seen this before, but when I saw this question come in, I actually went back and looked. And when Jerry Spencer Davis was trying to get Brandon out on bond, he had several people write like, you know, letters to the judge saying Brandon's this good kid and never known him to ever be in any trouble. And I counted 32 letters, 32 different people that wrote letters to the judge asking them to issue him a bond. Of course, obviously, the bond was $1 million or something.
To lower his bond.
Lower
he had
the
a
bond,
bond.
yeah.
He had $1 million bond.
Right.
But to lower it to something that Brandon could make and,
Right.
and get out, you know, realistically make.
Right. So yeah, there was a lot of people that would have testified, but I think and this is one of the questions I asked you when we were doing the interview for the documentary is, and what a lot of people don't realize is you can't just put somebody up there that has no relevant information to the case and just say he's a great dude. Like
right.
That comes on if there is a
punishment
discretion
phase.
in the punishment phase. There, you couldn't really call him as a witness, you know, even though you had all these people that are willing to say what a great guy he is, but there's no, they don't have a relevance.
What we did was we went through those people and figured out who were the ones that could rebut specific allegations, such as Brandon's mother never let him drive that truck, ever. And then we had, you know, 4 or 5 people come in and go, oh yeah, he drove it all the time. He drove it down to the feed store. He went here, he went there.
Right.
You know, somebody else to rebut that Brandon's father didn't know that Brandon was gay and disapproved, and that's why Brandon killed him. And we got people that are like, you know, Mr. Woodruff had a Dolly Parton room, hello. So
and knew that he had told other people that he knew that he was.
And and had discussed it with and because they had discussed it with Mr. Woodruff. So that's how we got those people in, was to rebut specific allegations or theories of the state's case. Yeah.
And one of the things, just to give everybody a little bit of a sneak peek, next week and the week after, when we talk about the trial, there's several places in there where we have a reenactment of you cross-examining. I think it's Charla.
Oh, that is
where
that is so good.
And we put that in the documentary, and we're going to put it in the podcast, where Charla's like, you know, this, and this, and you're like, well, wait a second, you told the Rangers this, and this, and she's like, oh yeah, and it wasn't just once; it was several times.
Yeah, I mean, her story was a sand dune. It was just whichever way the wind blew is the way her story went.
Exactly. So look forward to that.
Please tell me Helen Mirren is doing my reenactment.
She didn't return any of my calls. Can you believe it?
You know, at this point, I'd even settle for Meryl Streep.
Well, you know, I would too. I don't know, in the movie about this, I'm Brad Pitt or nobody. That's what I say.
I don't know who the hell would play me.
You don't want me to answer that.
No, I do. I do want you to answer. I want you to answer.
Billy Bob Thornton would be a good one.
No, he's a little too tall.
Well, yeah, okay, that's true.
I mean, if
Peter Dinklage?
Oh, God.
Yeah, or what's his name? Oh no, Vern Troiler. No, he's dead.
Oh yeah, he passed
Vern's
away.
dead. Okay,
Yeah, so it has to be Peter Dinklage.
There you go.
Peter Dinklage is a good-looking guy, man.
Yeah, I don't think you're that short, though, are you?
5'6". 5'6".
All right.
The camera
With
camera-
lifts.
The camera adds 6 inches.
With lifts, you're 5'6".
Yeah, with lifts, I'm 5'6".
The camera adds 6. What did you say?
The camera adds 6 inches. Oh wait, I'm thinking about the wrong kind of movies.
Oh gosh, don't
I'm
go
sorry.
there, don't go there.
Okay, I'm not going there.
Please,
Okay.
No.
Okay, Monica from New York. Sorry about that, and thank you very much for your question. Hope you enjoyed your answer. We're going to take a quick break, have a word from our sponsor, and we will be right back.
I don't suffer from insanity. I enjoy every minute of it. Did you know it's illegal for donkeys to sleep in bathtubs in Arizona? Also, to the guy who invented zero, thanks for nothing. These are just a few examples of some of the great mugs you can get at goodmonkeymugs.com. With same-day shipping on all orders placed before 3 p.m., your new mug will be at your doorstep in no time. Don't know what to give that coworker for their birthday? Or just want to brighten someone's day with a funny or inspirational quote? GoodMonkeyMugs.com is the place for you. And if you use the code AJARMY, your first mug is half price. Again, that's GoodMonkeyMugs.com. You'll go ape for our mugs.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the American Justice Podcast Q&A edition for episode 20. 20. Hope everybody's having a wonderful week so far. We've got a few more questions for you. We're here with Brandon's, would you say, Say it, Scott.
Easy for you to say.
Not easy for me to say. Obviously easy for
How
you to say.
about I say it?
You can say it.
Brandon's trial counsel, Katherine Ferguson.
There we go. We're here with her. We're going to go to our next question here from Billy in San Francisco, California. The one, I think it's the one and only San Francisco, unless there's another one. I think there might be like a San Francisco, Nevada or something. It's like an abandoned town. I don't talk about places I used to go to a lot because somebody complained. Somebody wrote in and complained that I'm always talking trash on like other places. But I mean, because I've been everywhere. And
I've been everywhere.
I have.
Man, I've been.
And if it's a place that I've been where I had a horrible time, I talk about that horrible time. And people are like, yeah.
Maybe it's not the places, maybe it's you.
Maybe it could be.
You're
nice.
the commonality
It
here.
could be.
Nice.
It could be. Like I can probably count on one hand the number of places that I've been to where I've just had an extraordinary time and I would even move there. Everywhere else is a meh. But I'm not going to do that anymore because I think it chases people away.
Well, I can say I've only been to San Francisco one time, but I had an amazing time.
I've
been there
Yeah.
twice.
Yeah, I've been to San
3
Francisco
times.
about 50 times, and I'd say about 50% of the time I had a good time.
It's beautiful.
It's
the weather.
depends on what part of the city you go to. Some of it is really beautiful and just
some of it is
inspiring, and some of
nasty.
it smells like pee because it has a horrible homeless problem that's developed over the last decade. Mm-hmm. Like I've actually gotten out of my car, and before I could even hit the button to lock it, there was already a homeless person peeing on my tire, and I'm not making that story up. Wow. And all you can do is let
It's
him
like
finish.
dogs marking their territory.
All you can do is let him finish.
Is this like a dog marking their territory?
Yeah.
Or is it like give him $5 and he'll stop? Like is that what?
That might be
Yeah,
it.
just oh man.
Just don't leave your windows
I'm
open.
gonna do Catherine a favor. I was gonna go into another story about a homeless person peeing on my tire, but I'm gonna spare her.
Yeah, please.
Spare her.
Save those for off camera.
Billy from San Francisco, where homeless people pee on your tires. I've lived in a big city my whole life, so I can't pretend to know what it's like to live in a small town in Texas. Well, I'm telling you right now, I lived here for a long time, and not once did anyone pee on my tire other than me. So, but
Thank you for sharing.
But do you think that Brandon would have been convicted if he was tried in Dallas or Austin or Houston?
Short answer, no.
Short answer.
Well, you know, Catherine, we're not here for the short answers. We're here for...
Well, it's the dynamics. You have, I mean, granted, in the 15 years since Brandon, it's been 15 since he was convicted? Oh, my Lord.
Well, it's been 15 since he was arrested.
Since he was arrested.
It's
Okay.
been, what, 11?
No, like 12. Yeah, 12 since he's...
I thought he
2009. So 11.
Oh, okay.
Because it took him 3.5 years to go to trial.
Well, yeah, there was that. Greenville has changed a lot in the years, and we're growing. We're getting a more diverse population, a more tolerant population. I mean, who would have thought 11 years ago that the Chamber of Commerce would be an openly gay man in a relationship?
Right.
I mean, and here it is, and so, if he were tried today in Greenville, I don't even know if he would get the same result or not. But I really don't think in a big city, because they're used to more, I would like to think they're used to more professional presentations of evidence, and this was just a clown car.
Well, and I also think more progressive people gravitate towards bigger cities as well. So it's like, in Dallas, or even Fort Worth, last, was it 2018, like when Beto O'Rourke ran, he took Fort Worth, Tarrant County, like that's never happened, So it's like, I feel like that in the bigger cities, you have more progressive people that wouldn't pay as much attention to something like, him being a closeted gay kid or whatever. So I agree. I'll agree with Katherine.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have no choice but to agree. I lived in this town from the time I was born until the time I was 21, went off into the military, went off and stayed in Los Angeles for a little while, came back for several years, and now I've moved to a big city again, and I've watched it change publicly. Privately, social media, no, has not changed all that much. Everybody is still very opinionated in the old ways. But publicly, yes, I've watched it. I've watched it change, because I do know who you're speaking about when it comes to the Chamber of Commerce. And I did know him way, way, way back then, while he was having to keep it all under wraps. And now he is very open about it, and people have accepted him, but I don't believe they would have back then.
Probably not.
So it's...
And next week on This Is Your Life, Chad Miller, we'll cover other places where Chad has lived and loathed.
I love Portland, Oregon.
I said loathed, not loved.
I loathe Miami.
There we go.
This is your life, Chad Miller.
One of these days, we're going to have one of those shows, and it's actually going to be on purpose.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the last episode, when pretty much the last episode of the season is going to be just me giving my opinion. I feel like that Q&A episode just needs to be us just shooting the shit and not even,
I agree.
talking about the case.
I agree.
FCC rules.
Well, luckily this is only going on YouTube.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, you can have, as we found out from a divorce case, you can have naked pictures of people's appendages put up on the screen as an exhibit.
Completely fine.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh yeah, that was some fun stuff. And the judge is like, okay, we can take that down off
We can
YouTube
take that down now.
Now they'll. I was walking in the park.
Okay, we're back to This Is Your Life, Chad Miller.
I walk in the park.
In case
in the
anyone
mornings.
was wondering where we're going,
episode.
it's
I walk in the park in the
Chad
morning
on Chad.
at Lake Cliff Park, and I had my music plays on my watch, and I do like a
Because
little,
we need to know that.
I do like a little me video, just ranting about stuff, and there was a song playing in the background of my video from my watch, and YouTube demonetized my video for copyright. But you can put somebody's wiener all over YouTube. It's fine.
Well, you can't
Well, it
copyright
depends
them.
if the wiener's copyrighted.
I take that back. You can copyright them based on.
Ron Jeremy's probably copyrighted.
Well, there's.
Probably.
I
You
don't
have to
know.
see his face,
There was
too.
there was an episode of some show I watched on HBO before I canceled it, and they were showing the real dolls and the men, and that you could get the real dolls of men, and you could have the appendage of your favorite porn star.
What?
But
Real sex.
Like actual
the
like
The show was called Real Sex.
was that what the part that amused me the most was that you could reach up there and pull it
Pull
out.
it right off.
Pull it right out. It was interchangeable appendages. It's like women would be really happy if that was in. Honey, I'm going out with the boys. Come here.
Come here.
All
You
right.
won't be needed.
Now you can go out with the boys.
They call that the Bobbit maneuver.
Oh god. I think that's a little different.
Yeah.
Slice and dice.
Okay. I was going to have a hard enough time trying to say this guy's name now with a big smile on my face. It's going to be even harder. I'm going to say Sariv. Sarive from Waxahachie.
Sounds good.
Waxahachie. Scarborough Fair.
Is it
Waxahachie?
Waxahachie?
It's Waxahachie, I think. Waxahachie.
Waxahachie.
If you were from Jersey, it'd be Waxahachie.
Waxahachie.
Or maybe that's Boston. I don't know. Waxahachie.
You're saying
Waxahachie.
Waxahachie.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is known for many things other than Scarborough Fair, but that's how I know Waxahachie.
Oh yes, I've been there once. Scarborough, a really good time.
It's a great place to spend money.
Scarborough.
That's
Fair.
all there is to do there is spend money.
Oh, really?
Spend money and look at people dressed as other things. It's like Halloween for a whole month. It's great.
Nice. I like it. Okay.
Sarive from Waxahachie
asking.
asks, I remember hearing about this case on the news, and I can't believe it's been 15 years. Me too.
Did we just have this conversation?
Yeah. So surreal. Yeah.
Yes.
But I was just wondering from Katherine what she goes through personally, and professionally, when a client that she believes in so much and absolutely believes in 100% innocent gets convicted.
It's very wearing, because you replay the case over and over in your mind, and you're sitting here, should I have taken this approach differently, or maybe if I'd done that, or maybe if I'd gone this way or that. And you end up second guessing yourself, and it's like a hamster wheel, and you just get on it and start going and going and going and going, and it causes a lot of sleepless nights. But the thing that I felt at least good about was when Yudishin and Anton did the appeal. They didn't see that we had done anything that was considered ineffective or bad. They were very laudatory of how we handled the case, and it was just this strange brew of circumstances that Brandon, wrong place, wrong time, with the wrong people in power to railroad him.
Wrong investigators. Wrong.
That implies that it was investigated.
Well, that's
they
true.
They never investigated it. It was the Woodruffs are dead. Brandon did it. Case solved. Yep. And then they never varied from that.
I still, to this day, whenever I talk to people about this case, and I've said it several times in the podcast so far, I just don't understand what made them think that, what made them so sure that it was this coming out gay kid that just...
Part of it is the prejudices, because Ranger Collins said, and it was in an interview, I forget who he was interviewing or talking to, but he said, well, if Brandon's capable of hiding his sexual preferences, he's capable of murder. Now that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Yep. But here you have, from an allegedly respectable, storied, legendary law enforcement agency, somebody wandering in with that kind of an attitude and that kind of stupidity. Yep. And then everyone, nods, and like he's just, some sage guru or something, nod wise and go, yeah, you're right, yeah. And it's like, no, apples and oranges.
Makes no sense.
Right.
Yep. I think, in fact, the first time that I remember him uttering it was the interview with Charla. And he said to her, if you could lie about being gay, then you can lie about killing your parents. And then he said it several more times in the interview with Alex, in the interview with James, and the guys that he was in the car with that night. It's like, it just, that seemed to be a running theme throughout his investigation.
That was the entire theme, was he kept his sexual preferences hidden from his friends, who were, let's face it, small town in Royce City or Fade or Heath, that no one in their right mind 15 years ago is going to just parade out and go, woo, right. Here I am.
Right.
And they used that against him to say, well, that means he's just deceitful in nature, so he can be a murderer.
Right. Well, the Hunt County Sheriff's Department in 2005, I remember very well. Yes, this is another part of the podcast where I'm going to talk about myself for a second. So sit down and get used to it.
This is your life, Chad Miller, episode 2.
I do remember the Hunt County Sheriff's Department in that era, and it was constant bombardment with, I I guess, homophobia, racism. I mean, the comments, the attitude, constant homophobia and racism. And I remember Brandon being there very well. And I remember a lot of people having a problem with him, and not a single one of those people had a problem with him because he was a potential murderer. They had a problem with him because he was homosexual.
Right.
And I remember those comments. And I'll do them all a big favor and not say names. But I do remember those comments.
You can say the names after you pay me the retainer to defend you for slander.
Right.
Libel and slander. Once you pay me that big retainer,
Then you can say all the names you want.
say all the names you want.
Oh, that'll be in the tell-all book that's eventually coming, guys.
Eventually.
You know that.
It's released on your deathbed.
The great Hunt County tell-all book that so many
The
people,
dark underside of
so
Hunt
many
County.
people ask for, but I'll probably never give you.
Dark underbelly of Hunt County.
But money talks.
Well, that's one of the.
And so
it goes
does
back
Chad.
to.
And so does
it goes,
Chad.
It goes back to one of the things that I always tell people. Because I try to convince them. Because everybody's like, "There's no way that he was convicted for being gay," and I tell people, after I finish laughing, I tell people, that it wasn't like the prosecution got up there and said, "Hey, this kid's gay, so obviously he's a murderer." What they did was they used his coming out process and the fact that he was hiding his sexuality from certain people, the church friends, the school friends, all these people that he didn't
Pizza
want
parlor,
to know.
don't forget the pizza parlor. The Great Royce
yes,
City
the,
Pizza
the
Parlor.
great-
where all the Archie kids hung out, obviously.
Well,
That's
but
right.
you have to remember too, there were two different sets of prosecutors, and when the Hunt County DA's office had it, they were going to cram Brandon being gay down everybody's throat every chance they got. They filed this. In trials, you have to file a notice of extraneous offenses where you're going to bring in things that the other bad acts of the defendant. And they filed this. They didn't file it under seal because they knew it would be publicized. And one of the things they put in there, amongst idiotic things like Brandon, when he was 5, hit Charla with a riding quirt, horror. But then they put in there that Brandon participated in hardcore gay pornography,
Right.
and that was disseminated out in the community. And
I remember that. I remember hearing about that.
yeah,
on the news,
and I filed a motion about that and argued that that's since there's no allegation he did anything illegal, who cares?
Right.
But the whole point was to paint Brandon a certain way, present him as pervy, if you like.
Right.
And anybody that go do porn movies is probably a killer anyway.
Right. Exactly. And when we cover trial in 2 weeks, that's actually one of the things that's already kind of in there is we have that motion that they made, the extraneous offenses, and we'll be talking a lot of that.
Well,
Sure.
I was proud of my response because I think I put in there some paragraph about that. This court only deals with things that are crimes, not with issues of morality, and that it needed to be left to a higher court.
Right.
In other words,
the ultimate court.
in other words, Judge, you lack jurisdiction over
Right.
this issue.
Even as much as some judges like to think, they are not God.
They aren't.
Hate to break it to them.
I love
Don't-
going
don't-
back
don't say
and
that too
reading.
loud around here.
When I write these episodes, I go back and I'm using all of this documentation as kind of a path to follow as I'm writing them, and I love going back and just reading your part of all of this because I can hear your voice in my mind and just like in the documentary though, which you guys will eventually see. It's one of the best parts of the film.
Oh yeah, and even in this episode when we had the what do we have, like 5 minutes of her closing arguments was, just the very first line is, "Judge, I hate the fact that I have to sit here this afternoon and argue the fact that a prosecutor listening to a defendant's attorney-client privilege calls is bad." Like that's the first thing. It's like I can't even believe I'm here talking about this.
Yeah.
But then you have the prosecutors over there saying, "Oh well, we had case law to support what we were doing," and blah blah blah.
They didn't.
And it's like, oh God, really? Come on.
Yeah.
So that's what I tend to say in the episode. It's like, you're bad, you got your hand caught in the cookie jar, but then you double down and try to make it okay. Like, I didn't understand it.
Well, that's where we get into, and that there's an issue that's going on about criminal justice reform and about prosecutors and stripping some of the immunity from prosecutors. Because right now, if Brandon was falsely convicted and, bad evidence or whatever, I don't know that he could sue the state of Texas, but he couldn't go after the individual prosecutors that did it to him. And I think we need to get past this idea that, well, tough on crime is I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't want criminals running rampant in the streets, right. But there's a limit between tough on crime and you presume everybody's guilty
right.
from the get-go.
Right. Right. No, there has to be evidence. So.
Well, what is it, Sherlock Holmes, that you let the evidence lead you to the theory. You don't come up with your theory and then look only for the evidence that supports it. You look at all the evidence and let that give you your theory. They went the other way. We've decided Brandon did it, so we're only going to look at everything that points to Brandon. What they said in the ranger said, Brandon told all these lies. Okay, well, what did he lie about? Well, he lied about what time he left the house, and then and that he called his mom, and we were like, well, did you not look at the caller ID? And right. Okay, he said he had pizza. There's the pizza in the refrigerator. Here's the receipt. Right. He everything he told you he did that night, we independently corroborated. The only difference was Brandon was a little off on the time. Right. And I'm sorry, but when you had whoever those, I won't say it, lawyers that were representing him in his interview, where their great sage advice was, don't argue with the investigator. Yeah. So when Ranger Collins said, well, that was about 7:30, wasn't it? Brandon's like, I guess. He didn't argue with him. He didn't know.
And they told him he didn't know. And then, but they kept
but
on
But
going.
then they turned that around and said, well, you're lying about the time because you said 7:30. No, Ranger Collins, you said 7:30, and Brandon said, well, that might be right. That sounds about right, yeah. But I'm not really sure.
Right. And the whole time
at the time, though, I mean, of course, no idea he was going to be arrested for the murder of his parents.
Right. He didn't even know he was a suspect.
If I'm an innocent person sitting in an interview room and I know there is not a hope in hell of me being a suspect in this case, they're going to say, oh, did you do this at 7 o'clock? Yeah, whatever. Yeah, sure. Yeah, 7 o'clock if I don't remember. Right. If I knew that I was being looked at as a suspect, I would probably try to be a little bit more accurate and think my ass off about those exact times. Brandon didn't know at the time.
Right. And the thing was also that they didn't yet have it at that point, but they were able to go back and get the times, the time that he hit that cell tower in Mesquite, the time that he got to Denny's, the time that they had all these times.
Well, they had part of it because they didn't get all the cell phone records.
The phone records. That was a whole episode almost.
Yes, they didn't get all the phone records, so we had an incomplete picture. Right. And the other thing is their experts sat up there putting the jury to sleep for 2 hours, saying, well, I can say that he was at this tower or whatever, and it's like, well, isn't there a possibility that wasn't the original tower and was a relay tower because of traffic? Well, yeah. Well, did you check to see if it was a relay tower or the originating tower? Nope. So really, you can't tell us if he was here or over here. You're right, I can't.
Everybody exhale in unison. All right, Sareed from Waxahachie, thank you very much for your question. We went above and beyond for that one. Throw us a nickel.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, our final question of the episode comes from John in Oak Cliff, Texas. If he's one of my neighbors.
Right down the street from
Right down the street from me.
The Life and Times of Chad Miller, once again, just so you know.
We'll have to go find John and see if he's one of your neighbors so we can hear all about your life.
I think the viewers have heard enough.
Like, is this guy again? He keeps talking. Why does he keep talking? You start buying books, I'll stop talking about it. There we go.
Everything you want to know about his life is in a book.
That's right, or a website, and you can just Google me. It's that easy.
It's free and it's in your pocket.
Yeah, that's right. It's free and it's in your pocket. John from Oak Cliff says, and then asks, I was able to go to the premiere that Mr. Poggensee had. See, I said your name right.
I know, I appreciate it.
I'm getting good at that.
I don't know if he could have, but I'm glad you did.
At the Texas Theater, and I wanted to ask Miss Ferguson a question then. So thank you guys for having her on, since I was too chicken to approach her then.
Aw.
I'm scary, apparently.
She's very approachable. I don't know why you would be...
She, in the courtroom, before I actually got to know Katherine, in the courtroom, she is very intimidating.
Good. That's the way attorneys should be.
Singing Barbra Streisand songs at karaoke, not so much.
Actually, I sang Annie Lennox.
Oh, you did sing Annie Lennox. That's right.
Oh, wow.
Okay. God.
Get it straight, dude.
I was such a drinker back then. I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Was it Sweet Dreams?
No, it was No More I Love Yous. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Ah.
That'll be next week on the karaoke edition of the Q&A.
Karaoke edition of Q&A. Okay, but I just wanted to say that from everything I've seen and researched on this case, and I too believe Brandon was completely railroaded, what does Miss Ferguson believe went wrong? How can such an obviously innocent person be convicted of such a horrible crime? Being part of the LGBTQ community, it scares me to death that something like this could happen to me. Keep up the good work, guys.
Yeah, you should be scared. Police and prosecutors are given tremendous power, and unfortunately, they don't always wield it properly. And I think part of what went wrong in this case is, again, they didn't fully investigate. They made up their mind. Brandon's our guy. I mean, they had it solved, what, 72 hours after the crime? Brandon's it. They didn't get the phone records that we were able to put together some of from pulling from his girlfriend and some other people's phones. We were able to try to put together a timeline that showed that during the time of the murders, Brandon would have been pretty much on the phone the entire time. Or, here, I've just shot my parents, hold on, click, stab, 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 click. Okay, I stabbed my parents, now, hold on, click, stab, stab, stab. And they never checked the phone for DNA. They never checked the phone for blood.
Right.
And,
And they had the phone. They had it in there.
They still have it.
Yeah, they still have it. Yeah.
They still got it. Just sloppy investigation. Sloppy investigation, and this can happen to anyone. It doesn't have to necessarily be LGBT. The big celebrated case that criminal defense lawyers in Texas talk about is Michael Morton. Similar scenario. He goes off to work, his wife's murdered, he had had an argument with his wife the night before, he'd left a note with a few ill-chosen phrases in it. He comes back home, they throw him in the ground and say, you're the murderer. And the thing that really, you read his book is excellent, it's called Getting Life. But his son, who I forget however old he was at the time of the murders, they asked the kid, did Daddy kill your mommy? And he said, the monster killed Mommy. Yeah. Is Daddy the monster? No. And they ignored that, just settled that Michael was the one who did it, didn't investigate, didn't do anything else. And Michael spent 20 years in prison, and his son grew up for 20 years thinking that his father had murdered his mother. And it was all because, again, it was a rush to judgment. We're going to solve this case 72 hours. In this one, they'd solved it in, 3? The report comes in of something happened at the house, and they show up. And again, if reading Mr. Morton's book, he pulls up, gets out of the car, walks up onto the yard, and the sheriff's officers are throwing him in the ground like, hey, you SOB, we got you now.
Right.
And so it can happen to anybody. And that's the really frightening part about Brandon's case is that, the LGBT angle, yes, that I think played into it. But the simple fact is the state holds all the cards. And if they don't do a thorough investigation, there's evidence that can be exculpatory. There's evidence that can exonerate you that could be lost forever, like those cell phone records, because they didn't do their job. They didn't do a thorough investigation. They made an assumption, Brandon's our guy. They only looked at what would back that up, and they didn't look at anything else. And it's scary because it could happen to anybody.
Yeah.
And that's why I stay locked inside my apartment.
I thought it was because your wife wouldn't let you out in public.
She has shaved me down and taught me how to speak.
Not very well from what I've seen tonight.
And on both counts. It's starting to grow back.
So I actually have a question that popped into my mind while you were talking. I said we may have more questions. So I have my own question for you that I'd like you to address. So one of the things that when I was researching and doing this episode of the podcast, obviously on the Sixth Amendment violation, one of the comments that Judge Beacom said was that there's no way that he would dismiss this case because of the seriousness of the charges. And that was I think that was in the motion, the arguments that you guys were having over the motion to dismiss because of the prosecutorial misconduct. And it just amazed me that, and one of the points that I make in the podcast is, if the state, well, first of all, you got to think, okay, well, of course it was a serious case. You'd hate to think that they would violate every ethical rule of attorney-client privilege just to convict somebody of a parking ticket. Like that, you would hope that they at least reserve that.
Trust me, it happens. I've represented enough clients that are guilty of nothing more than driving while black.
Oh yeah.
And they get pulled over and all kinds of fun ensues.
Yeah. But as far as this, Sixth Amendment violation, when he says, that I'm not going to, that I'm not even going to entertain the idea of dismissing the charges because of the seriousness of the case, that made me kind of draw the conclusions in the episode that, wait a second, if that's the case, if the state can really do anything they want, what prevents them from going in his cell and beating the crap out of him and getting a confession that way, or any other violation of any constitutional amendment?
You have hit the nail right on the head with that. And there was another capital murder I was working on a couple of summers ago, and a letter that my client had written to me at my law office. I get it, and I see that the top is sealed with tape, where it was slit across the top of the envelope, right, and then resealed. And before I opened it, I went back over to the jail and said, "Did you send this to me like this?" He said, "No." And then we requested records, and here comes his letter to me in the discovery, stamped record of the Hunt County Sheriff's Office. They were opening inmate mail.
To address to an attorney.
Yes, and my client, not only did it have their little stamp that says, privileged attorney-client communication, my client had written on like 4 different places in big, bold letters, legal mail.
Oh, wow.
They opened it, they copied it, they put it back in, they sealed it with tape, and they sent it to me. Same case, they were trying to incite my client by bullying and harassing him. They would go in. First off, they tried to keep him in isolation for forever. But then when he was in a regular pod, they came in and they tossed the pod. What were they looking for? Commissary. And what did they do? And the officers testified. They went through his legal papers twice. They just freely admitted, yeah, we went up there and we went through his, well, we can do it if he's standing there. I'm like, no. But it's for bad behavior on the state to prejudice a prosecution and get it thrown out. It almost has to be, they were sticking bamboo shoots up under his fingernails and lighting them on fire, right. Something like that. Now, defense, if we do something a little bit that's pushing the envelope, the judges will slap us down faster than God got the news, but the prosecutors just kind of have free rein to run. And part of the problem is, and I don't have the answer to it, but part of the problem is when judges are elected, it's a political process. And judges are thinking, well, if I dismiss this capital murder, I'm very definitely going to draw an opponent. So I'm not going to do the right thing. I'm just going to say, well, I'll craft some kind of solution. We had one case where a judge did the absolute 100% right thing in a juvenile case. Steve Shipp did it, and of course, he ended up losing his position as judge. He lost an election because in juvenile cases, it's not like criminal cases where you can just automatically send somebody to prison and you don't have, juveniles, you have to, the state has to put on evidence that the child cannot be safely monitored and loose in the community. And this kid, it was, I think he shaken baby, but the kid had been out on bond for like 2.5 years, no problems. Never violated a condition of bond, never had to come back into court. And I mean, I got people that can't be on bond 2.5 minutes
Right.
that they aren't out doing something.
Drive from the bond office to the bar, like, you know.
if that long. And so they couldn't meet that first prong. And he knew that if he made this decision, it might cost him his bench, but he went ahead and made the brave decision, but it did cost him his bench.
Yeah,
So that's part of the problem with politicizing and you know, saying we want judges who are tough on crime. No, judges are the umpire. They call balls and strikes. Right. The person who's supposed to be tough on crime is the prosecutor. The judge is supposed to be the neutral arbitrator. He's supposed to sit there and okay, the state did this right, or the state did this wrong, or the defense did this right, or whatever.
Right.
They're not supposed to have an agenda, but we're in a climate, being in Texas, where everyone's, well, yeah, I need a judge that's tough on crime. It's like, no, you don't understand their role.
Right.
That's not their role. That's not the role of a judge. And unfortunately, that's too nuanced an argument for most of your low information voters to grasp and say, yeah, wait a minute. Of course, then they come in and now it's their little darling that's been accused and they're facing this mess and they're like, how can they do this? You voted them in.
Right. It's always different when it's you.
Yeah, well, it's always, you know, everybody else is always guilty, but then when it's my little darling, you know, it's my ox getting gored, suddenly it's, how can they do this?
Right.
Isn't this illegal? Isn't this unethical? And you're just like,
yep. And that's and you know, and I argue in the episode that it seems like for this particular violation that dismissal was really the only solution, because it's not like they just learned where the murder weapon was, or you know, it wasn't like they actually got what they were trying to apparently get. They learned all of your trial strategy and what the witnesses were going to say and what they,
well,
you know.
Arguably, we don't know what they learned. I mean, the judges read those cases and those transcripts in a vacuum, not knowing the facts of the case, not knowing, for example, the barn guy that Brandon talked a lot about with Miss Guyton. And so a judge just coming in cold, not knowing the facts, you know, unless the transcript has Brandon saying, yeah, I shot him and I hid the 2-foot knife under a bunch of crap in the barn,
Right.
They're not going to understand what's important about that. And the fact that Brandon was laying out, well, you know, there was this guy to talk to and there was this person and we need to look at this and we need to look at that. And even if it didn't give away anything necessarily that said Brandon did it, it gives the other side insight into how you're preparing
Right.
for the trial.
Right.
And we have a system where it's the state's burden. The defense doesn't have to do a darn thing. Just sit there like a bump on a log, and the state has to prove it. And when the state inserts itself into the attorney-client relationship of the defendant such that they can start gleaning information as to how is the defense progressing, what are they looking at, what do they consider important or not important, that's valuable trial strategy information. But unfortunately, the case law and the judge who reviewed it, it was, you know, well, unless it, you know, he's in there saying, yeah, I did it, and here's where the knife is, and then the state went and found it, you know, we're not gonna dismiss.
Right.
And of course, the other problem was, on top of that, the other problem was they wouldn't let us have the notes to
Right.
see what they
did learn,
learned,
right.
what they found significant in what was discussed.
Right.
So,
And then they turned around and played it for a few of the witnesses, Michelle and Morgan Lee. They played some of the tapes that he had. Of course, we don't know if they were the attorney-client tapes or if they were just random tapes of him talking to his grandma or what. But they played these tapes, and you know they're using this information to bias witnesses that normally would have been on his side.
well, and they can do that all the time with jail calls when
Regular calls,
Fred calls up Bubba and runs his mouth, but attorney-client, the concern is again that it's giving an insight into how we're approaching it, who we're looking at, what we want to do,
Right.
and it's again if the state has to really cross the line before they get their hands slapped. Right. And even then, the lawyer that I think the judge, he became a judge, but he was the Williamson County DA that convicted Michael Morton. Mm-hmm. He went on to become a judge. Right. Gee, there's a pattern here.
Right.
And
he eventually got
he got disbarred, but he had to do like 2 days in jail, maybe. And then the other prosecutor who succeeded to the DA after this guy went onto the bench fought for 7 years to prevent DNA testing on the bandana that was found in the backyard that ultimately led them to the guy who was the did it. So not only, and this was the terrible thing about Michael Morton's case, not only did you have this great injustice of imprisoning an innocent man, but it left the real killer out there, and he went and did it again 2 more times.
Yep.
If they'd done this properly, 2 people might be alive.
Yeah.
I have a question now. This is a very simple question. All right. This happened. We all know this happened. This thing happened, which means it probably had happened before, it just never came into question.
They never got caught before.
They never got caught. So we know it happened, which I'm going to lean toward it probably happened several times with other cases before this, which made it okay to them to happen this time. But has it happened since?
Well, as I told you, since the time of Brandon's case and that Sixth Amendment violation, the jail was opening my client's mail to me.
So it's the same thing.
Yeah, and the part of the problem with this too is that we've gotten to a point where everyone forgets the prosecutor's job is not to convict, it's to do justice.
Find the truth, yeah.
And we've turned it into a system where it becomes so adversarial that everyone's too busy playing gotcha and, I don't like this defense attorney, so I'm going to really put the screws to him on this case, or I hate this defendant and I'm going to put the screws to him, instead of stepping back and going, wait a minute, we have a higher obligation here than just to see this conviction. What should have happened is when they got the recordings and they played them, the first second they heard either Linda's or Mr. Davis's voice, they should have stopped playing them, picked up the phone, called Mr. Davis, called the judge, gone down into chambers and said, we have a problem and we need to know how to deal with this. If they had done that, none of this would have happened. But they were so busy, now we can embarrass them and get them because we've got their phone call messages, we've got their own discussions going on, ha ha ha. and it's kind of an immature attitude towards prosecuting, because it's, again, they're not recognizing that you're playing with someone's life. Yes, this person has been accused of a horrible, horrible crime, but they aren't guilty until 12 people say they are.
Right.
And for the state to suddenly say, well, he's guilty and he's a piece of crap, so it doesn't matter if we blah, 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 blah. It just totally blows up the whole purpose of our system.
Right.
Okay. Well.
I agree with Katherine.
I agree.
Very wise of you.
Thank you.
And now Chad will bring episode 4 of the Life and Times of Chad Miller.
I wasn't even gonna do that. So
well, there's lots more to this case, and maybe if Katherine will grace us again when we finish this season, we'll come on and we'll talk about kind of the whole case in general and some of the.
I'm
stuff
happy to come back and help out and bring whatever illumination to it that I can, because I'm kind of like y'all. I'm still scratching my head going, how in the hell? I think I said in my closing argument, this movie, it reminded me of The Wizard of Oz, that the state's case was the big green head with the flames shooting up.
Yeah. And
they're saying, don't listen to the defense who's over there, Toto, pulling the curtain back.
Right.
Don't look over here. Look over here at this stuff over here, but don't examine over here.
Right.
I always think of My Cousin Vinny, but that's just disrespectful to Fred Gwynn.
Well, and I never understood why, when the special prosecutors came in from the AG's office, why did they not take a look at this and just be like, we got nothing? Like,
because they were brought in as the special prosecutor, and I can't say that this is what happened, but I do think there was a little bit of protect the brethren. That's completely and utterly my supposition, guess. I have absolutely no evidence to that effect, and I'm certainly not trying to besmirch Adrian or Ralph, but I think there's a little bit of a bias there, and of course, they were stuck with the crappy investigation that Hunt County did. So by the time they got the case, even if they had questions to say, well, we need to go get these records because these records may show that he really didn't do it, they were lost.
Gone, yeah.
They were already lost in the mists of time.
Yep.
So, but I also think there's just a little bit of maybe naivete, that you don't want to think that your fellow prosecutors could do something this crappy.
Wow.
I mean, even though we've got legion of evidence to show to the contrary, everyone still likes to think that, prosecutors are always out for justice and they wear the white hats. And defense law, when I tell people I do criminal defense, I see them looking at me like I've got a mask on and a bag labeled swag from when I went in and burgled somebody's house, because that's kind of how they look at me. They're like, well, you're no better than your client.
No, and the Constitution affords us a competent and
vigorous and zealous defense.
Exactly.
Even the great, Charles Manson, Adolf Hitler, Ted Bundy, pick out the worst of the worst, where we know they did it. They're horrible people. They're still entitled to the process, because if we start winking and nodding and not holding it to that rigorous standard, that's how we end up with Michael Morton's or Brandon Woodruff's.
And that's what drove me crazy about Judge Beacom's letter when he was saying that there was a Sixth Amendment violation. He puts in the letter that the more that we violate the more we have these types of violations, the less the public is going to have faith in us. But yet he's not dismissing the charges. He's not taking any corrective act. In the letter, he didn't even recuse the DA's office. That didn't come till later.
Now there's a technicality on that, because you cannot recuse. You can recuse an individual prosecutor from a case, like if they're prosecuting their ex-wife for DWI or something. You can go, get somebody else in the office.
Somebody else, right.
But you cannot ordinarily recuse an entire office, because that is deemed to be, in effect, undoing the election. If you recuse the entire office, you're basically undoing the election and the choice of the people to say, this is the office that I want as my prosecutor, whoever the DA is. What happened is, I think they went down to their annual, I can't remember if they do it in Padre or Corpus or wherever, but they went down to their annual prosecutors conference, and I think a bunch of prosecutors probably came up to them and said, dude, y'all have screwed this up. Y'all need to get out. Because this is, if y'all don't get out, this is coming back on appeal, is I think what happened, because we filed our motion, the judge denied it, they go down, they're at their conference, they come back, and suddenly it's, we're recusing and asking for a special prosecutor. So I think some people probably pulled them aside and said, y'all have screwed this up enough, give it to somebody else. Again,
They definitely screwed it up enough.
total speculation on my part. I have absolutely no evidence to support that. That's just my little...
Noble Walker put in the letter or in the motion that we feel like if this comes back on appeal, that there will be issues with the fact that we were continued to. So that was their position.
That was their position, but
I'm because of the conference.
But I'm not. But as I said, my personal suspicion that somebody went up and told them,
you might want to rethink that.
You have messed this up enough. Get out now before you completely blow it up.
Yeah, because that's what people don't realize now is when all of this was going on, it was kind of a big deal. Like, it was kind of going around.
Well, and if I'm correct, Brandon's case was the first time a DA's office had gotten popped for tape recording attorney-client phone calls. Because when I was reaching out to other lawyers across the state saying, look, they're doing this, I need some help, I need some, can you give me some insight? Some of them were like, oh yeah, they do that in Collin County all the time. I just don't talk to my clients on the phone. And I'm like,
oh my gosh, wow.
I'm like, oh my God. So I think this was a case of first impression in Texas where we actually popped a DA's office for it. And of course, I have no idea who tipped off the Dallas Morning News, but God bless them. Because I don't think Beacom would have found a Sixth Amendment violation if the Dallas Morning News hadn't gotten involved.
Wow.
Because we were sitting in court one day and it was like, I think it was like a Thursday. We're sitting in court and we're listening to Judge Beacom talk, and we're going to come back on Tuesday and he's going to give us our ruling. And it's going one way, and I'm looking over at Jerry going, bend over, here it comes. And then we go back into the courtroom on Tuesday and he's, well, I want to clarify a few things, that were misquoted, blah, 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 blah. And I looked over at Jerry and went,
We got him.
the wind has changed.
Nice.
So.
Well, we will definitely do this again at the end of the season so we can answer everyone else's questions.
I'm more than happy to
What, 5 episodes? We're
Run
5
my
episodes
mouth.
away.
Yeah, we're 5
episodes away from the end of the season.
We got 2 episodes on the trial. We're doing the knife next week, and then the 2 episodes on
You
the
mean
trial.
the sword?
The sword.
Knife, sword,
Well, it's like
dagger, pig sticker.
Well, it's like sea monkeys. You add water and it grows.
Yeah, exactly.
So
We'll talk all about that. Then the trial, then the appeals, and then the last episode is I get to tell everybody my opinion.
That's going to be a good
And I'm sure that is just, no one has any idea what that is.
No, not at all.
No clue. It's going to be suspenseful.
It's going to be
You'll
so
have
good.
to tune in.
He's going to pack up and move.
I know, right?
Change his address, change his phone number.
Oh yeah, they will not. Certain people will not like what I have to say for sure.
Certain people already don't like what you have to say.
That's true.
But they can just not like it.
That's true.
Yes.
They can kick bricks, as they used to say.
yeah, just do that.
I had a more colorful expression, but given FCC regulations,
Right.
even if it is YouTube, I won't.
We don't want to push
But it had to do something about a flying at the moon. But
Right. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us once again for the Q&A edition, episode 20, American Justice Podcast. Don't forget to listen on Sunday to episode 21. You said we're going to talk about the knife slash
Sword
dagger
slash dagger slash
sword.
Depending on who you ask.
Depending on who
What
you
it
ask. Yeah, make sure that you tune in on that one. Will there be some video? If they watch that on YouTube, will there be some video in it as well?
Yes, we have some. We actually have video of when they found the dagger, sword, knife thing. So we'll be playing some of that. We'll have some reenactments. I think we have another reenactment from Katherine, if I'm not mistaken.
All right.
So
all the more reason to
and
check
no
us out
more,
on
no
YouTube.
Helen Mirren or Meryl Streep. I'm bummed.
Well, if you can get in touch with them and have them get in touch with me, I'd be more than happy.
If anyone knows Helen Mirren, I will be happy to let a 70-something-year-old woman play me. Because she looks better than I do now.
She is amazing.
So she's awesome.
And if anyone knows Benicio del Toro and can somehow get him to walk around everywhere on his knees, kind of like Tim Conway, Dorf on
Oh yeah,
Golf.
Dorf
You
on
remember
Golf.
those?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
No, you need what's his name?
Peter Dinklage.
Yeah, Dinklage.
Dinklage. If anyone knows Peter Dinklage,
Or
Well,
Brad-
see, because that just, Chad Miller portrayed by someone with the name Dinklage.
Dinklage.
and Peter.
And Peter. Gosh.
We're going to end it on that. You guys
right.
have a great week.
Thanks. See you later.
Bye.